Welcome back to another Dune Imperium video. Today is a strategy video, but it is all the board spaces values all compiled together. So if you didn't want to watch it separate and you just want to put it on all one video, here it is. It's a big gap session, but I'm going to compile it just to have it here if you want to put it on for dinner or something like that. But it is here for the people who like to do things like that. But if you do want to watch it in parts, it is going to be there in the link below in the bio. All separated as well on the playlist of strategies. All right, appreciate you watching this series, and until next time, enjoy. We are back with another Dune Imperium video. However, today is another strategy video, and I'm going to preface this video by saying that it is not a recipe for victory, and things depend on game state, leaders and matches, cards acquired from Imperium and T-Laxo row, intrigue, starting position. Dune has a lot of variables, so things can change fairly quickly, and the value of board spaces can change depending on your particular circumstances and the game state. However, in this video, I am going to explain my opinion and view on all the board spaces, starting with early game, which is what I'm classifying as round 1 to 2. Mid game is round 3 to 5, and late game is round 6 to 10. I made this video in the mindset that those are the rounds, so when I'm speaking on values, that is where I'm thinking of, as we are seeing more round 6 finishes, so I'm considering that as the late game now, and obviously round 7 is the usual end game anyways. So with that being said, we are going to start with the city spaces. So I'm going to go over the value of Airkeen, Carthag, Research for early game, as you don't see Siege in early game, but that would be mid game. And we're going to start talking about first Carthag and Airkeen. Carthag and Airkeen, these two spaces you will usually see be played to as second agent actions most of the time after people have played their faction access or have gone to smuggle or perhaps desert depending on leader. Carthag is more valuable in my opinion round 1 though than Airkeen, as you don't want to risk drawing your other faction access if your starting hand was one faction access, as that can mess up your round 2 plays. However, if maybe you did end up with 2 faction access round 1 and you weren't able to get them played, you could consider going Airkeen as second agent to draw a card so that you'll be able to shuffle a faction card back into your hand round 2. But in that scenario, you should have used Diblo instead of Seek Allies. That way there's 2 faction cards for you to be able to perhaps shuffle in to be that 5th card in the following round. There's also a scenario where you may draw all desert access round 1 and say you were able to smuggle round 1 as player 2. You could Airkeen to hope for desert access on the shuffle next round so that you can smuggle round 2. Otherwise, I would say Carthag is the city space I would like to go to in round 1 if my hand was bad or if I was blocked elsewhere. You could end up with a combat entry that could swing combat in your favor in that early game there, and you can decide on if you want to toss in 3 troops or not with that injury knowledge. Or maybe you top deck an endgame card, and that kind of dictates what your strategy might be for the rest of the game, such as if it was plans within plans, corner the market. Grand Conspiracy, however, this one kind of sucks, and I don't really say you should focus on it, as it is a grand quest in the end. So Carthag and Airkeen are both city spaces that offer strong utility in the early game, especially as second agent actions. While not as core to engine building and economy building as smuggling, full space, or wealth, these spaces play an important strategic role, either helping you with hand setup, combat positioning, or acting as a fallback option when other plays are blocked. And just to end this section here, I'm going to go over the bullet points that I have made here. So Carthag over Airkeen early. Carthag usually preferred in round 1 due to the safer troop plus intrigue that you gain without risking a draw that could disrupt round 2 plays. Airkeen for draw fixing can be useful if you're trying to cycle back into needed access cards or take a gamble for next round setup, or perhaps gain persuasion for this round 1 reveal. Backup option, both are solid second agent plays when blocked elsewhere. Carthag can offer a hidden combat value with a lucky combat intrigue, maybe endgame intrigue as well, while Airkeen adds hand flexibility, persuasion gain, perhaps save hand for next round, depending on the access that you are reaching for. Alright, so let's move on to early game value of Research Station. We'll go through the points first. Research Station is rarely used in round 1 to 2 unless you're aiming for a big persuasion reveal for a specific Imperium card like Lady J. Even then, you are gambling and wasting resources if it doesn't work out. It can be kind of leader dependent play as well. Can be valuable early for leaders like Helena or Paul who benefit from strong card draw or Signet synergy, such as Helena going still suits into Research Station round 1 with Signating to pull for that big card. But however, with Immortality added now, could be used to early cycle into 2 experimentation / research icon for players pursuing 3 specimen T-Laxo cards like the Stitched Horror or Unnatural Reflexes, Gola, things like that if you would like to do that. However, it is costly resource wise, but I mean cards like Stitched Horror are pretty game changing with their on playability effects, so it is an option for you early game to do. So with that all being said, round 1 to 2 you mostly aren't going to see someone go research unless it is a niche scenario such as the Helena with the Seek Allies to still suits into research with Signet to pull for like the 6 on a Lady J. You could see Paul perhaps for a big persuasion with Seek Allies into still suits into research with the ring to draw 3. Otherwise, I mean, there is a play with
the Tilaxu, say you have 2 experimentations in hand and you're trying to get that 3rd cube in round 1, you could go still suits into research, and then you research icon into that 1 specimen, and then you reveal your other 2 experiments, and now you have 3 to pull off Stitch Horror, or maybe you want Gold or something like that, but I think Stitch Horror is maybe the only one I would do that for. And in the scenario of the Helena or even Paul trying to pull for big persuasion, now with Immortality there is the Atomics, so I mean for Helena it's a little better because she can swipe that card off, but for Paul, it's gonna be a little dangerous for you to do that with. At least with Helena you can put the card to the side, unless someone might predict you're trying to do that if they see Helena go still suits, but at the same time they might just think you're trying to do the Conspire play. So it is, you could do whatever, but if you don't happen to hit that 6 or whatever card you're going for on that research, that is a lot of wasted resources, especially early game when your goal is trying to get that Swordmaster as fast as possible. Alright, so let's go over the bulletin points for mid-game value of all city spaces. So backup plan, city spaces are mid-game fallback play, is often used with your last agent to limit combat or support a combat heavy strategy. Intrigue, edge / save me / thirsty. Gartheg is the strongest for potential combat intrigues, maybe endgame intrigues or something else that could help you along with your plays and strategies. Air King helps fix your hand, and Sieges for grabbing water when needed to set up other plays that require water. Utility or setup typically lower priority than going faction, shipping, or spice spots unless your deck or game plan demands otherwise. City spaces, mid-game is still, you're going to go there with your last agent. There's so many other things you want to be doing here in mid-game, like playing 2 factions. You want to maybe ship, go Landsraad, grab spice. You're probably more focused on going elsewhere, and these city spaces are still the last thing you're probably going to do with your last agent as a means to maybe get involved in combat by limping in. Or if you went heavy into combat through, say, Hardy Warriors, Hayliner, you could go city space to put a little more pressure on in that conflict. I would say mid-game Air King becomes a save hand space, trying to draw yourself persuasion for Spice Must Flow or a high persuasion cost card. Save your hand from it being terrible. Believe me, that's what it is for me most of the time when I have to go Air King first agent mid-game so I can play on my other 2 agents. I do think Gartheg is probably a better spot to be going to, though, in mid-game compared to Air King or Siege. Obviously, it depends on your strategy that you're trying to go for, but Air King, I mean, maybe you do have a card you want to see for a reveal effect, or you do want to pull for persuasion, or you're trying to save hand, yes. But Gartheg, you can get an intrigue and toss a troop. The intrigue could be anything. It could help you for faction bumps, spice, troops, endgame, anything, right? So I think just, I don't know. I really like gambling, so I really like gambling on the intrigues on Gartheg. Now, obviously, if your strategy needs you to go Air King or Siege, then obviously, right, you're going to go there to do those things. And like mid-game, Siege, if you had no access to still suits but are still trying to set up a play where you need water, such as research or grabbing spice, or maybe you do want to get Hardy Warriors but your access is in the next hand, then you probably go Siege to get that water, so then next round you can set up for that Hardy Warriors or set up for that spice. However, I would say if Gartheg and Air King is open, I would say those are higher priority if you have no need for that water, right? Now, mid-game for Research Station, I mean, mid-game you're going to Research Station to maybe draw for Spice Must Flow, gain that research icon to move you across the Tilaxu track of research. Maybe you need a good card from the Imperium, such as a Chom's Directorship, a Full Scale, a Lady J, or just Spice Must Flow. So you feel like going to Research Station is something that will help you get there. However, you do have to consider whatever you are picking up Imperium row-wise, you may only be seeing 1 to 2 times depending on your deck size. So do keep that in mind. Alright, so late game value of city spaces. Research Station, huge value for this spot late game, as to draw 2 to 3 cards, especially if you're at the end of the research track. You will get that 3rd card draw to dig for combos or reveal cards or salvage weak hands. Air King, modest value increase for this card as a fallback draw space when research mentat selected reading are taken. Could help dig for a key card or persuasion. It is a gamble though. Siege drops in value, often in a desperation, deployment, or niche water grab for, say, Sayadina, Water of Life, Spice Tiebreaker to pick up Spice after that water grab. Rarely a priority. And Gartheg holds steady value with 1 intrigue, can be clutched at late game. It could either be a combat, endgame. Who knows? It could be Quid Pro, strong arm that you still have 1 agent remaining to go steal an alliance. Anything really can pop up on that Gartheg intrigue. It's kind of crazy what can happen. Alright, so to go more in depth about that, Research Station value does shoot to the top. You'll see players setting up in previous rounds getting water so they can hit research as a first move if others have 2 water, as well as depending on the position as a means to block others, but more importantly for yourself to be able to draw 2 cards, perhaps 3 if you have been playing your experimentation and getting those research icons throughout the match. And you're aiming to get a Spice Must Flow, maybe draw into some reveal type of cards you may have picked up along the way. Maybe you had a bad round 7 hand shuffle, which always happens to me for some reason, and you need research first agent move to save that hand and give you options to play. I also think the value of Air King goes up here at this point in the late game as people are trying to dig into their deck to try to gamble and grasp for the last straws of trying to get Spice Must Flow, or that card that they have a reveal effect on, or just trying to save hand if other spaces are taken, like Research Mentat Selective. Now when it comes to Siege late game, the value goes down tremendously at this point, as I hope that you've already set up earlier for water if you plan to do something with that water, such as Research. Otherwise, this kind of becomes like a last resort deployment space, unless maybe your strategy involves getting water, as I said before with Sayadino, Water of Life, last ditch effort to gain Spice into Great Flat or Haga for a big Spice tiebreaker, or set up for a Hayliner if no one else had that Spice, but I would think others would have already set up and thought ahead maybe. Otherwise, this is the least valuable space when it comes to city in late game. Okay, all right, so now we're going to move on to the yellow spaces, desert spaces. We're going to talk about Smuggle, Imperial Basin, Haga Basin, Great Flat, and Interstellar Shipping. All right, so first we're going to start with Imperial Basin and Haga Basin. I'm going to go over the points here. Leader dependent, strong early picks for leaders like Leto, Hondro, and Prince, who gain extra value from Signet Ring or tech grabs going to Spice tiles. Immortality synergy. Immortality brings experimentation, which you want to get those played out. So if you're not hitting Smuggle with it, you're going to see players going to Imperial Basin to trigger that experimentation to start advancing research. Last point, flexible fallback. Often used when better city spaces are blocked or hands are weak, lets players still gain Spice or contest conflicts. Alright, so let's go more in depth with Imperial Basin and Haga Basin. I think the value of these spaces early game is more leaning towards what leader you are. Leto, Hondro, Prince, in my opinion, more so Leto and Hondro for obvious reasons, as their Signet Ring requires Spice to utilize the ability. Prince, more so if there's a cheap 2 Spice tech in the row, you can go grab it on Haga Basin. But also with Immortality, people want to play their experimentations, as I said, so you may see people going to Imperial with experimentation for that reason, to get that research going. If city spaces are already taken and their hand was maybe bad, so they didn't have many other options, or they were just blocked on what they actually wanted to do. And also you can limp in on desert spaces as well. And as I said, with Immortality expansion be added here and experimentations, these spaces gain even more desire, as many players want to play their experimentation cards early to begin the process on research track, and Imperial Basin often becomes that convenient way to do so if smuggling was blocked and any other desirable city spaces were taken and your hand was weak, or your strategy calls for a light conflict presence in that round. These basin spaces also serve as a solid fallback or transitional play that can still generate Spice for future leverage, or to keep a player tactically involved in the conflict without overcommitting otherwise. Alright, so let's go over Smuggle's early game value. I'm going to go over the points. Solari Engine Starter. Smuggle is key to building early Solari for a fast Swordmaster. Turn order, priority. If player 1 skips it, player 2 will almost always take it if possible. And round 2 or round 3 Swordmaster timing. Smuggle enables Swordmaster by round 2 or 3 when paired with Wealth or Solari Conflict. Alright, so I'm going to go more detail of Smuggle. It's a very sought after base early game, especially if player 1 for some reason decides not to go there. Then the player in position 2 will definitely be going there if they have access. That means that the following round, if they have access again in their round 2 hand, they can drop and be at 7 Solari, which means if they had gone Wealth, round 1 a second agent move, means now in round 2 after dropping on Smuggle, they now have 9 Solari for a Swordmaster purchase on second agent. Otherwise, they may go Wealth round 2, or maybe Conflict had Solari, so it could be round 2 Swordmaster, or it could be round 3 depending on what Conflict was and how much Solari you got. Okay, and now I'm going to go over Interstellar Shipping early game value. We're going to read the points first. So Resource Engine, Interstellar Shipping generates huge early value, Solari, Spice, troops, and faction bumps all from one action. Unlocked advantage. The first player to unlock and use it often controls it for 2 to 3 rounds straight, creating a strong tempo lead. And leaders and conflict synergy. Leaders like Baron, Tessia, Leto can unlock shipping by round 2 with their right draw / conflict, setting up powerful early turns and strategic flexibility. So to go more in detail with Interstellar Shipping, it's highly fought for. First person open shipping usually gets it for the next 2 to 3 rounds, depending on the game state, the leaders in the match, the cards acquired, conflict rewards, and intrigues. And most matches, in my opinion, this is usually how it goes at a high competitive level. Position 1 goes Smuggle. Position 2 goes Fold, ideally with only drawing 1 faction access, so that in round 2 they will have their second faction access to then go Fold again to unlock Interstellar Shipping for round 2. And position 3, position 4 in round 1 will either go Wealth or Still Suits for the Conspire route to gain Swordmaster. Interstellar Shipping gives big value in resource generation, allowing you to gain Solari for that Swordmaster for round 2, round 3 early, as well as faction influence bumps and 2 troops, Solari or Spice. Leader wise, you'll see Baron have this open quite early if things happen to line up, such as Baron getting Hardy Warriors round 1 with Master Stroke on one spacing guild and the other Master Stroke on whatever, and the round 1 conflict being a faction bump, so that then the Baron wins the conflict and puts his faction bump into space, and now he has it unlocked for round 2 first agent. And perhaps depending on his positioning, he can hit Fold space as first agent instead of going to Interstellar, and then he can sit on the track on the second level, and then round 3 he can drop grab the Spacing Alliance for 3 Solari plus the 5, and now he has 8 for Swordmaster on second agent in round 3. Just like Baron, Tessia can get chipping open fairly quickly as well if things go right. Wait for you as well with card draw and conflicts, such as you go Hardy Warriors and his faction bump and your Tessia, and you have Signet Ring in your hand as well. So now you go Hardy Warriors, then you go Signet Ring to wherever, drop down one of the Fremen to go up in the spacing, and then you win conflict for the faction bump to get up to the friendship on spacing to open up Interstellar for round 2 first agent. Alright, so we'll go over Great Flat for early game value. We'll read over the points here. Spice for Solari, combos well with Conspire to sell 4 Spice for 5 Solari, 2 troops, and an Intrigue, setting up Swordmaster timing. Setup dependent play requires planning in round 1, still suits for water, and desert plus faction access cards in round 2 to execute. Flexible follow-up, after Conspire, remaining Solari can come from conflict / opponents dropping from shipping, maybe a wealth round 3 turn 1 to finish off Swordmaster costs. Okay, so to go more in depth now about Great Flat. So Great Flat early, you need to prepare in round 1 if you're trying to get it round 2, which also includes having the proper hand to do the Great Flat to Conspire play, which is round 1 you need to have had at least 1 faction access in hand to go Still Suits to be at 2 water, and then round 2 your hand needs to have at least 1 desert access and the other faction access card. And Great Flat will have 4 Spice sitting on it in round 2. So your first agent action will be to go to Great Flat, then second agent action into Conspire to sell for that 5 Solari, 2 troops, 1 Intrigue. This is something you will see players do who started in positions 3 or 4. Round 1 set themselves up for as a means to get to Swordmaster quickly. Now you are still 3 Solari away from Swordmaster with this play. However, you may get a Solari from a conflict round 1 or 2, or maybe you got Solari from a different player dropping on the shipping track, and taking Solari means you'll be at 6 Solari then, which in this line that means you just need to hit wealth in round 3 and get a green as well as your faction there for the Swordmaster if no one else has their 8 Solari. This line of play is most commonly seen with players going 3rd or 4th, as full space and smuggling are often taken earlier, making Great Flat an appealing pivot. When it works, it gives you a massive resource swing in just 2 actions, allowing you to stay in contention for Swordmaster, applying pressure and conflicts, and drawing into potential game-changing intrigues. While this still leaves you 3 Solari short of Swordmaster, that gap can often be filled by other players dropping from shipping track or conflict. Alright, so mid-game value for Haga Basin, Imperial Basin, and Great Flat. We'll go to their points here. Imperial Basin, experimentation spot with immortality, serves as a research aligned backup when interstellar shipping or smuggle aren't accessible, or you have no graph cards to pair with your experimentation to get those research icons out. Haga Basin, tech / selective breeding setup, solid spice source to fund tech row buys, or selective breeding to trash and thin your deck. Great Flat combo plays a big spice haul. It sets up tech grabs, flagships, shuttle fleet, or conflict swings via Hayliner. Alright, so we'll go in more in depth there with that first point. So with Immortality, Imperial Basin and Haga Basin continue to be spaces there for you to play your experimentations to if you don't get interstellar shipping or smuggle and you have no graphing cards to get those experimentations out with that graph to get that research going. However, most of the time I think you'll see people go to these spaces when spice is built up on them. For example, like Haga being 2+2 or Imperial Basin being 1+2. 3 spice when no cost is very valuable, and you'll see people hit these even if Haga has 2+2, as you'll be trading 1 water for that 1 extra spice compared to just going Imperial and getting 3 spice for no water cost, right? Great Flat, you'll see people who may have gone Still Suits earlier or 1 water in conflict maybe set themselves up to grab the spice that's been building up on this since round 2. So it could be 3+2 or 3+3. Usually you look around at your opponent's water count and determine if you can get water and hit Great Flat first, or delay it if you already have 2 water and no one else does. Great Flat is huge value to grab mid game to set up for Hayliners, for tech grabs, if the spice has been built up on that bonus tile there. It is most ideal, I would say, for 3+3, obviously for the Hayliner being 6 spice right there when you go to pick it up. But if a big tech is in the row as well, that is also a nice pickup and grab the tech, flagships, shuttle fleet, Halsman engine, even the 4-cost Chimerki, and invasion ships. Alright, so let's go over the points for Smuggle mid-game value. So Smuggle, diminished value without follow-up. Just moving up 1 track level mid-game feels inefficient and weak unless you are first next round, or have infiltration tools such as T-Lax Infiltrator, Invasion Ships, or Chom Delegate to utilize that in the same round. Otherwise, tempo setup still plays a role in setting up future interstellar shipping if you're denied this round but plan to contest it in the next round. Alright, so to go in more in depth, Smuggler's value drops mid-game as moving up 1 spot on the track feels kind of like poor value unless you're first in the following round to hit interstellar shipping, and you can gain that benefit immediately to increase your tempo, or you have a means of infiltrating interstellar shipping maybe like that round with Infiltrator or Invasion Ships. Otherwise, I think with that, I think you would rather just Invasion Ships to interstellar and set up for your next round being second on the track instead. But otherwise, sitting on the track, just on the bottom line on a Smuggle, it does feel bad if you can't boost that tempo up in the next following round. All right, so the mid-game value of interstellar shipping. We'll go over the points here. So top tier efficiency remains one of the best agent spots mid-game with 1 influence bump plus immediate resources such as your 2 troops, spice or solari / if you are going to the top of that rope and jumping off, you do get that -2 on the tech discount, which is huge. Potential for tempo swings. Give it to me cheaper pairs beautifully obviously with that -2 tech discount, especially for grabbing big impact techs such as the Holtz engine costs 6 spice, now it costs 4. Shuttle fleet costs 4. Flagships cost 6 now. So give it to me cheap with the interstellar shipping. Leader specific tempo spikes, extra value with Leto or Hanjo, combining the signet rings with that interstellar shipping access for huge economy / faction plays and alliance swings. Leto's signet ring for double bumps to take alliances, or Hanjo setting up on that second level, using your ring to then drop, and then maybe you go again next round so you can set yourself back up on that second level, and just rinse and repeat with that tempo push of all those resources and benefits and efficiency on that space. Alright, so the late game value of Haga Basin, Imperial Basin, Great Flat, diminished value, often stripped of the bonus spice by now in late game, usually only offers the base spice. Endgame conversion spice here can fuel tech buys, selective breeding, or resource to point pivots. And spice tiebreaker, help, I can win this by spice tiebreaker. Alright, so Imperial Basin, Haga Basin, late game, lose value as they probably only have their base spice on them and perhaps no bonus spice, as players have probably scooped up that resource to set up for these final rounds coming. So if they still have their bonus spice on them, you can still turn that spice into potential tech or selective breeding to reach spice must flow, or you can gain needed Benny influence for alliance perhaps, or friendship if you still haven't got it. Otherwise, these spaces become spice tiebreaker, intrigue fuel for private army, or last resort deployment spaces in late game, in my opinion. Now, with immortality, if you are at the end of the research track, your experimentation does turn into a draw if you play it here, so you could be gaining spice and perhaps draw that much needed card you need for your strategy, or perhaps that last 2 persuasion you're missing to flip out for that spice must flow. Great flat late game is usually just spice tiebreaker at this point, as most of the time the bonus spice is already gone as well, so you're just sitting with a 3 base spice. If that's not the case though, then this could potentially be a play where if it does have enough spice to put you at 6 spice, you could take yourself to Hayliner. Maybe there is a big tech that you can pick up that will give you an extra VP for the end here at like engine or flagships, or perhaps shuttle fleet to take an alliance in this last couple rounds here for late game. Otherwise, I'm sure Hayliner, if no one else has access, you can get it too. Alright, so let's go over the points for late game value of smuggle and interstellar shipping. So first point, only high value if you are set. Big payoff only if you're already on the second tier. Otherwise, too slow / risky. Risk of getting cut off. Late game interstellar shipping play can whiff if you don't get a chance to drop. Examples, you're blocked, bad hands, game ends. Niche utility, can't clutch out small resources, gaps like 1 Solari for chum shares, spice for intrigue, combat, tiebreakers. Alright, so to go more in depth for that, we'll start with smuggle. So smuggle loses huge value unless you're already on the track. There is usually no reason to go smuggling in the late game here, unless perhaps it enables you to do another play. Maybe you're missing that 1 Solari for chum shares, or another intrigue that may swing conflict, or you need that last experimentation played and the desert spaces are blocked, so this is your only out to get that played. Maybe you are on the bottom of the track of shipping already, so you could drop to get 2 spice, perhaps for tiebreaker, to enable combat intrigues, or maybe you need Solari to enable combat intrigues as well. And interstellar shipping is only valuable late game to those who are already sitting on the bottom of the track or are already set up on like second level perhaps. It may turn it into something such as a bump, troops, Solari spice, or even tech, even if they are at the second track there and they can drop. Otherwise, if you're trying to hit interstellar shipping and smuggling late game, someone's probably going to see what you're trying to do, especially if it interferes with their plan of maybe keeping an alliance and they can see that you can get that alliance. If you're able to get interstellar shipping smuggle, then they may choose to block you on that smuggle, and that move of you going to interstellar to set up on the second level is now nullified unless you have another way to drop like landing rights or expedite intrigue. Then it's just basically a dead move late game. So it only really benefits players who are already set up prior to going into late game, or if you have some means of being able to drop yourself, or you're already set up at some point, so smuggle you can drop for something. Other than that, value kind of drops unless you're already set up on both spaces of smuggle and interstellar shipping. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the value of the Landsraad spaces. So High Council, Mentat, Swordmaster, Dreadnought, and Tactile. We're going to go over early game, mid, and late as we've been doing. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's go over to the bullet points here. Persuasion boost converts a weak card like a dagger into 1 persuasion, enabling higher value Imperium row reveals, 5 to 6, 7 cost cards. Early tech positioning sets up tech purchases or block opponents from grabbing powerful techs like memo cords or mimic film, early game, or even artillery. Leader discount synergy, so it works well with Elise Ekaz's ability. Send away like the dagger, you send the dagger to tech, now you have 1 spice off the dagger. Prince's Signet Ring, you get a -1 from the tech negotiator, you get a -1 from the Prince Ring. So now you can get Memo Quartz for free, Mimic Film for free, Wind Traps if you wanted, or there is Memnon Signet Ring, which gives you 1 spice. So Memnon Signet Ring to tech can also get you Memo Quartz, Mimic Film, Wind Traps, whatever 2-cost spice tech that is available there for you. Alright, so that's the bullet points there. So early game, you'll see people go to tech negotiator to gain like a tech token, gain 1 persuasion, perhaps turning their dagger into the 1 persuasion to gain on top of their persuasion in hand, allowing you to maybe grab higher cost Imperium roll cards such as 5 persuasion, 6, or if you really have the hand for it, which is like convincing, recon, experimentation, and dagger, then you could send dagger to tech to get to 7 and then reveal on your second agent. It's a really niche scenario, but it's still a play if you don't see yourself getting any other value out of those remaining cards that you've got there for your second agent. But it is a little more difficult now with atomics, as the 6 or 7% cards can be blown away before you reveal. I don't know if many people will realize that you're going to reveal in second agent, but there's always that gamble. If someone does bomb the run, then you better have a second plan to play out that last agent, because now your 7-cost card is gone. Also, beyond the persuasion, early access to tech row is another huge perk. If you're not buying a tech immediately, maybe placing a token can block opponents from techs they do need early on, especially like those Memo Chords, Mimic Films, or even if someone wants to go combat for artillery. So like I said earlier, leaders like Elise Ekaz, Beast, or Prince may aggressively eye these techs due to their synergy or affordability, with them be starting with a spice, Elise Ekaz being able to send away the dagger for a spice, and Prince being able to get a discount off of Signet Ring, right? Even Memnon with the 1 spice on Signet Ring. So allows them to secure those in round 1 if they would like, right? So for example, if Memo Chords is there in the starting tech row, Beast is available leader, you might see people pick Beast. Depending on positioning, maybe Beast can go to full space, and as second agent move, if no one blocked tech, now Beast can go to tech and grab Memo Chords, and now he has interstellar shipping unlocked for round 2, first agent, right? All right, let's talk about this next spaces. I think it's very niche space here in early game, the Dreadnought space. I personally don't go Dreadnought 99% of the time when I play early game. Now, there are matches where I have gone to Dreadnought with leaders such as Leto or Prince, right, in the earliest rounds of round 2 or 3. Otherwise, I'm 100% focused on just rushing to Swordmaster. So this space early game has very, very little value to you, in my opinion, unless you are leaders like Leto, who you may be able to afford that Dreadnought early, or Prince, you have some Solari kicking around from Conflict 1 spite, or Solari reward. So you can't afford Dreadnought because you don't see yourself getting Swordmaster anytime soon. So that Dreadnought's 4 strength for you, which may lead you to gain Solari from another conflict. Maybe Guildbank Raid is the next conflict. You don't know. Stuff like that. Otherwise, I think Dreadnought early games round 1 to 3, you're not going to see people go there most of the time. Like very, very, very rarely you're going to see someone go there early game. Okay, so we'll just go over the bulletin points here. So leader specific value, as I said, early Dreadnoughts are most valuable with Leto discounted costs. Instead of 3 Solari is 2 Solari. And Prince early game, getting Dreadnought, it's worth 4 strength for Prince if you're playing him instead of just the regular 3 strength, because that's his leader ability, which early game, that 4 strength, that's 2 troops from other players if they just want to match you off of a 1 Dreadnought, right? So it definitely gives you better combat presence, and it also kind of forces your opponents to overcommit, which is the next point here, combat efficiency. So in rounds 2 to 3, a Dreadnought can secure easy 2nd and 3rd place rewards, often forcing opponents to overcommit, because if you are Prince, 4 strength, that's 2 troops from your opponents. You hope they have daggers to get over your 4-1 Dreadnought. Usually you're tossing probably Dreadnought and a troop, so now you're at 6 strength, right? Off of only 2 units. And even that, I mean, still, your Dreadnought just off the 4 strength can still get you easily, as I said, 3rd or even 2nd place rewards, and then the Dreadnought goes back to your supply because you didn't win the combat, so you don't have to put it on a space. And then the other point here is a niche alternative to Swordmaster. This is like very niche, but it's like only worth considering early if Swordmaster is going to be blocked for you and extra Solari is available from other sources like Yuna's ability or Solari conflict, so you can afford to maybe go Dreadnought and get into conflict and get Solari out of a conflict, which just refunds it basically. Otherwise though, you probably aren't going to see people going Dreadnought. I mean, they'll most likely, if they're not getting Swordmaster, they'll just pivot to High Council, or may just hold on to Solari and try to get Swordmaster when the next available time is, which might be round 5 or 6 for them, but they're still going to hold that Solari and not pivot to something else to make use of that Solari in the moments. Alright, so let's talk about the space and your whole reason for trying to get Solari early game, Swordmaster. Bulletin points here, huge action boost. Getting Swordmaster round 2 gives you 6 extra actions if the game ends round 7, so 20 total actions versus only 14 without it, right? I mean, round 3 gives you 5 extra actions and so forth. Early tempo advantage, more agents means more flexibility to contest conflicts, gain resources, and make key influence plays before others can, since they only have 2 agents and you have 3. High impact, early only. The later you get Swordmaster, the less value it gives. Early rounds equals maximum payoff and stronger long-term momentum compared to if you get Swordmaster round 5 or 6. Game's going to be ending soon, round 7, 8-ish. I mean, mostly it ends around 7 in ranked, but I have been seeing games go a little longer sometimes where it's like round 8. But still, Swordmaster round 6 doesn't feel good. Swordmaster round 7 definitely doesn't feel good. And Swordmaster round 8 is unheard of, right? But yeah, earlier you get it, the more impact it is. Alright, so to go like more in depth with that, so Swordmaster, most desirable spot early game. I mean, look how good it looks, so desirable. I know I want the space 100% of the time. I hate playing with just two actions. You know, you'd rather 3 people do your work than 2 people, right? So you get more done with 3 workers than 2. Personally, hate playing without Swordmaster. I find it sometimes difficult to adapt with only 2 agents, as it makes every move have to be moving the needle a little further along to get to that victory, and you need good cards to help you back you up with only 2 agents. Ideally, cards with good reveals, as you aren't able to do 3 full actions, right? So you need cards that can give you sort of those actions on reveal, or even cards with good on-play effects to gain you resources and advantages and momentum otherwise, because you are only playing with 2 agents to try to push you to that finish line. Because I mean, if you try to run games with two agents, you kind of have to close the game out pretty quick, as those guys with 3 agents are going to be able to gain more momentum later on in the late game than you are going to have with only 2 agents, unless you got a lot of good cards. Maybe you're getting lucky with intrigues. That's like the only way where you can kind of compensate for only having 2 agents. So just aim to get Swordmaster if you can, because Swordmaster will make your life easier and give you a better chance at winning, in my opinion. So in short, Swordmaster is a game-winning tempo tool when acquired early. It gives you more options, more flexibility, and more scoring potential across the board. I mean, especially with Immortality now, experimentations, you want to be playing those to get those research icons to gain you those bonuses and benefits off that research track, and to get yourself those T-Laxu VPs, which, I mean, I feel like the first T-Laxu VP is kind of essential at this point. It's like the friendship on the board. So 2 agents, definitely gonna be hard for you to get that experimentation out, because you want to be doing other things. So Swordmaster, try to get it if you can. Otherwise, you're gonna have to be playing a more tighter game, higher efficiency playstyle, because every agent is gonna have to generate some serious value to keep pace against those players who do have their Swordmaster. Early value of the next space, Mentat. Mentat round 1, you will usually see be used by Ilban, Leto, or Archduke. Those are usually your 3 suspects. Ilban to gain the double draw, perhaps gain extra persuasion for a better Imperium card, see what others might reveal on in the Imperium row. Leto gets a discount of 1 Solari on the Mentat, so you might see Leto go there for the same reason as Ilban, to draw 1 card to gain extra persuasion, see what others reveal, perhaps even gamble to draw the ring if they did not have it in the starting hand, and a spice tile is still open to use to gain most likely the spacing bump. Archduke likes to use wealth to Mentat early so that he can get his leader ability going to get those trashes. So wealth, Mentat, then into a city, Landsraad space, or desert tile with the other agent, with the last agent, so that he can trash a card at the end of the round. Other leaders early rounds 1 to 3, you don't usually see go well to Mentat. Now you may see some players do it. Is it the most ideal thing to be doing as other leaders? Probably not, but you might still see players do it. But mostly you'll just see those 3 suspects, Ilban, Leto, and Archduke, be the ones to go wealth into Mentat early, as otherwise you don't see people do it. They want to save for that Swordmaster money, right? They don't get as good of benefits as those 3 other leaders do for getting Mentat early. Okay, so I put High Council in mid-game value spaces, as I think early game Swordmaster should still be your top priority for your Solari early. However, when it comes to mid-game, you may have to pivot to High Council if you don't see yourself being able to get Swordmaster anytime soon. Alright, so let's go over the points. Strategic, pivot, and Solari optimization. High Council becomes a strong mid-game play if Swordmaster is blocked or delayed. Spending Solari here lets you convert resources into valuable persuasion, especially when access to Swordmaster is uncertain for you. Deck building, timing, and diminishing returns. Its value is front-loaded. Getting High Council by round 3 to 4 maximizes its return via deck building here. Row control and awareness in immortality, aiming for high council early to grab strong Imperium cards is riskier. Opponents can atomic away those key cards. Okay, to go more in detail with that, high council is a powerful board space that is generally best acquired early, ideally by the 3rd or 4th round to maximize its benefits. Getting it sooner rather than later allows you to capitalize on the increased persuasion and potential cards you may be able to get from the Imperium row. However, the optimal timing can shift based on the specific game state. There are times where you will get High Council first if you don't see yourself being able to get Swordmaster anytime soon. You'd rather spend the Solari that you got now as a means to do something with that resource, as you can always gain more Solari later on. As well as there are games where you may not get Swordmaster at all as you get blocked, didn't have the access. When you could have hit it, it feels too late to really benefit it from. Learning when to pivot to High Council is a really good judgment skill, as if you see yourself being blocked on Swordmaster till round 4, 5, 6, then it's probably best for you to just spend that Solari now, gain the benefit of having that High Council 2 bonus persuasion, help get Spice Bonus flows later in the game. And personally, I feel like later on in the game, High Council's value kind of diminishes slightly, as you are probably already done the deck building aspects of the match, other than maybe picking up 1 to 2 really good cards. You probably don't want to be clogging your deck up, as you won't be seeing the cards you acquire in early game as much. Now, when it was only Rise of Ix, I would say sometimes even going High Council or Swordmaster when there's a powerful Imperium card would have been worth considering, but now with Immortality and the Atomics, this play becomes more risky, as players can see you skip Swordmaster and go High Council, knowing you're trying to reach that persuasion to get that powerful card, such as Lady J, Home Directorship, For Humanity, Kwisatz, Full Scale Skull, and they will just nuke the row unless you're Helena and can Signet Ring the card away to the side to save it. Going by my in-game stats, I only take High Council 64% of the time, but Swordmaster 93% of the time. This may also be due to the fact that I hate playing with 2 agents, so I always prioritize going Swordmaster, even if that means holding onto my Solari for an additional round, where I know someone other players would have just gone High Council instead to gain a benefit immediately. That might be just my player style. I find it more often than not that I'm stress playing when I don't have Swordmaster, but also in those cases, if I don't have Swordmaster, I need High Council. As with 2 agents, you rely on having good agent box cards and reveals to be able to close out games with no Swordmaster. Now, I will say, those games where you are able to get Swordmaster early and find an opportunity to get High Council feels really good, because later in the game, that 2 persuasion off of High Council is very valuable to get those Spice Bonus flows, right? You might not have to draw as much now because you have that additional 2 persuasion just sitting there in your hand anyways from that High Council. Technically speaking, you have that 2 persuasion there in your hand, so you don't have to try to draw as much, so you have more opportunity to do other plays because you're not reliant on just having purely what's in your hand to get that 9. You have that 2 persuasion on the board there that helps you as well reach 9. Okay, on to Swordmaster mid-game value. Still strong but timing sensitive. Swordmaster retains good value in mid-games around 3 to 5, but its impact starts to diminish past round 5 since you've missed out on several potential bonus actions earlier in the match, in my opinion there. And situationally, late pickup, by mid to late game, Swordmaster is often only worth pursuing if a specific synergy is available, like say you have Recall Agent, and can immediately convert it into a tempo positive play. Otherwise, the investment can feel too slow or inefficient in mid game. I mean, ideally, you're hoping to get Swordmasters round 2, 3, at worst 4, but ideally 2 or 3 is what you're aiming for, right? Most of the time, I feel like I'm getting it round 3. Unless I have a really good start, then it could be round 2, and depending on leader, obviously, as well. And if like you can get smuggle type of vibe. But more so on that, I mean, Swordmaster still has value, but once you touch round 6, which I'm considering is late game in this series of videos here for values on spaces, the value of it, Swordmaster drops a lot in my opinion. Now, that's not to say that the additional action in round 7 won't be good or helpful. It's just that the value of Swordmaster is diminished the later you get it, as you've missed out on all those extra actions had you been able to get it earlier, like rounds 2 and 3, 4, I guess. And once it becomes round 5, if I don't have Swordmaster, I kind of just give up on getting it at that point. Unless like the game state calls for it as such, like as I said, the recall agent intrigue. So going to Swordmaster, I can recall my agent and now I'm a +1 action. Or if I had like embedded agent type of thing, so I can turn going to Swordmaster into also going up on shipping now as well. So I'd rather spend my 2 agents. If I'm not getting Swordmaster, I'd rather spend the 2 agents trying to push my game plan further. And there are times where I still grab Swordmaster late, but it does feel extremely bad in most of those cases, as I will have already most likely pivoted to high counts already, so I'm usually shortchanged with Solari by then, and the Solari I've gained is either from being involved in a conflict per se that rewarded Solari, or that I've just collected over time from going to wealth, intrigues, or people dropping from the shipping track. Alright, so Mentat mid-game value, flexibility, and late round info advantage. Mentat gives a powerful fourth action if you have Swordmaster, letting you act last and react to opponents' reveals and conflicts with more information. Crucial in mid-game for calculated plays. Key synergy for draw-based leaders, especially valuable for Ilban, the double draw from Mentat. Leto also contesting the Mentat space gets the discounted cost of it being only 1 Solari, making it in contested space when those leaders are present. So to go more in depth there, Mentat is still very strong in mid-game, as usual. Late game, still strong. It allows you to dig into your deck as well, as you will be going last in the round since you have 4 agents total. If you have Swordmaster, which is really strong as you can evaluate the conflict, see what everyone else reveals for, such as dagger reveals, intrigues like reinforcement, double cross, if they wanted to use counterattack to deploy 2 more troops in, which gives you information on the situation at hand so you can determine what you're going to do with that last agent, if you're going to commit more to the fight, or maybe you're going to pull off and do something else, realizing that you're not going to get that fight. Also, leaders that love Mentat best is obviously Ilban. Mentat becomes a double draw for Ilban, which is huge for cycling your deck and revealing for big persuasion to get those Spice Must Flows or other good Imperium cards early in the game. Leto likes Mentat as well, as it only costs 1 Solari, so you will see competition between Ilban and Letos when they're in the match together. If those leaders are grabbing Mentat first, obviously Ilban benefits the most from grabbing, as it is 2 card draw at minimum. But overall, Mentat is still good for every leader, as I said earlier, it does allow you to evaluate the end of the round basically, as you are going to be playing last, so you get more information on what your opponents are doing. You also have to take in that there is only 4 draw spaces. 1 requires Solari, which is Mentat. 1 requires 2 Water, which is Research. And 1 requires 2 Spice, which is Selective Breeding. And then there's Air King that's free to cost to draw, right? These spaces will always be a priority for players in mid-game to cycle through their deck and even thin out their deck with Selective Breeding, Trashing, aiming to get Spice Must Flows and other good Imperium cards to finish off building their deck and trying to optimize their plays. All right, let's talk about tech and Dreadnought mid-game value. I just put these together here as, I mean, they're both related to each other. So tech dependent, the worth of using the tech negotiator space hinges on the availability of impactful techs. If no desirable techs are present for you or your opponents, the space boils down to just a +1 persuasion for you and a tech token maybe for later if a better tech appears. And efficiency concerns. So like Dreadnought, it can feel inefficient mid-game if you can't afford to pair the action with a tech purchase. Spending an agent for just a Dreadnought, 3 Solari, or 2 if you're Leto, without the tech benefit feels underwhelming unless it supports a major combat push, or say you have high priority travel. Then Dreadnought actually becomes a little more valuable because high priority travel onto Dreadnought allows you to deploy that Dreadnought plus 2 troops from your garrison into conflict. So it kind of gives you like a pivot into combat there with those 2 combinations of high priority travel and going to Dreadnought. Otherwise, it does feel a little underwhelming just to go to Dreadnought, just to get a Dreadnought. And if you're not even getting a tech as well, and it's only purely just for that Dreadnought, it definitely feels inefficient and kind of slow and underwhelming. And also, in my opinion, the mid-game value of tech negotiator is kind of determined by what techs are available. You could just be going there to get that 1+ persuasion, which may allow you to get the Spice Must Flow, and then you just get your -1 tech token afterwards if there's no desirable techs for you, right? But otherwise, tech negotiator and Dreadnought are really reliant on what techs are going to be available, and more so like the game state and what your strategy is kind of going for. Especially if like there's no good techs, then you're probably not going to be hitting these. Especially not Dreadnought. Dreadnought's probably going to be not touched at all for you. More so tech negotiator to get the discount and then grab a good tech. And then mid-game, even Dreadnought space is sort of the same as tech negotiator, except you get more value out of the space by having the spice to buy a tech while getting a Dreadnought. Otherwise, you're just using an agent to go Dreadnought, spend 3 Solari, get the Dread, and that's it. So you're missing the other half of the space's value, which is the tech portion. Now, sometimes Dread and no tech, but it does feel a little bit of an inefficient action at that point. Now, if you got Grand Conspiracy, though, and you want to get 2 VPs off it for some crazy reason, I don't recommend focusing on the Grand Conspiracy, like the Grand Quest, really, because it is kind of like the worst endgame intrigue, but it could be something if you're trying to complete that Grand Quest. Otherwise, Dreadnought is not usually hit as often, I would say. I say it's a very low priority space for a lot of players. All right, High Council and Swordmaster late game value. So High Council, clutch persuasion push. High Council can serve as a late game desperation play to gain the last 1 or 2 persuasion you need for Spice Must Flow. Swordmaster, opportunity cost rises as the game progresses, using 2 agents to push your win condition. Combat VPs, tech shipping, etc. often outweighs chasing Swordmaster late, especially if you already pivoted to High Council or you missed those key Solari windows to get Swordmaster. So oftentimes, I mean, round what I'm considering, 6, 7, 8 rounds, you most likely you've just given up on Swordmaster by now. You've already spent your Solari that you tried scrounging up in those early rounds for High Council to benefit you to get Spice Must Flows in the late game, because you're not really going to Swordmaster. It's very inefficient this late into the game. Now, High Council, you may see, as I said, people just go there as a last move just because they're missing that persuasion, and maybe they don't just need one persuasion, they need two persuasion, and they have that dagger still in their deck, so now they go High Council. Now that dagger is worth kind of like two persuasion in a way, and they can afford that Spice Must Flow they need to maybe close the game out or win their tiebreaker, whatever. But these two spaces, late game High Council, you definitely see hit more often than you see Swordmaster in the late rounds here. You see people go to High Council as the last move if they haven't picked it up and they've got the 5 Solari just laying around. You'll usually see someone go there if it's going to benefit them to get that Spice Must Flow. Alright, so I just grouped these three together, Mentat, Tech Negotiator, and Dreadnought. So Tech Negotiator, still situationally useful, can enable last chance pickups like Flagships, Holt's Engine if you got 2 Spice Must Flows, or you are going to have that second one here at the end of the round, late game, or Shuttle Fleet for alliance flips. Sometimes just a way to squeeze out 1+ persuasion from a leftover dagger to get you that Spice Must Flow. Mentat, high late game priority, especially if research station, selective breeding are taken. You don't have that 2 water, you don't have that 2 spice to get those spaces, so now you're looking at Mentat to get you that additional draw. An extra action gives a vital flexibility at the end to react last, scout combat, and plan your final plays, often a key to winning close matches. Dreadnought, rarely worth it late game, mostly dead space unless a must-have tech appears and tech negotiator is blocked and you just have that raw spice to pick up that tech. You're not going to see Dreadnought be taken here as a priority. Maybe you got Crane Conspiracy, you needed one more Dreadnought, sure, go there. Maybe you have the 8 spice to get Flagships and tech is taken, so you just go to Dreadnought instead to pick it up, sure, that works. Otherwise, it's rarely worth it late game to be going Dreadnought unless you're getting that value out of it in regards to picking up a key tech that's going to help you push your victory. Factions. So we're going to start with Still Suits, Hardy Warrior, Secret, Selective, Full Space, Hayliner, Wealth, Conspire. We're going to talk about all those. We're going to start with Still Suits. Alright, so let's go over the bulletin points here like we've been doing. So Thirsty, valuable early game spot for gaining 1 water. Limp enables early combat involvement by deploying troops to potentially secure 2nd or 3rd place rewards, such as Solari, Spice, Injury, or more water, depending on the conflict. Big Solari moves, water gain can be used to grab Spice at the Great Flat in round 2, setting you up for that Conspire play round 2. Alright, more in depth, Still Suits rounds 1, 2, 3, very valuable early game in the sense that it allows you to get involved in combat, gain a resource being water, gain faction influence with the Fremen, sets you up for that Conspire play, which players in position 3 and 4 will usually do as a means to get their Swordmaster. Also, depending on the game state, situation, and early game conflicts / cards in the Imperium row, so that's T-Lax row. There's also some niche value in Still Suits into a research station if you're perhaps Helena with Centering to gamble for a big persuasion, or you're Paul with Centering to try to draw 3 cards. However, in Paul's situation, there is Atomics with Immortalities, so it gets a little more dangerous and loses value. There's also the play with Still Suits into research to get the specimens, like I've said earlier, to get Stitched Horror or another 3-cost T-Lax card, but I think Stitched Horror is really the only one that's valuable to be doing that play with. But yeah, early game, definitely Still Suits is going to be sought after. If people have faction to play in those early rounds, Still Suits will be played for sure, along with Full Space, Wealth. Those are like the 3 main ones that are going to be played early, is someone going to Full Space, someone going to Wealth, and someone going to Still Suits, right? And even into our next position spot here, Hardy Warriors. That's the 4th one that people are going to be playing their faction into. You're not going to see many players go Secrets early game, unless, city spaces are taken, maybe their hand is bad, or they just want that bump, or there's a scenario, maybe they were Hondro and they want the intrigue and other places were blocked, so as a first move, they were going Secrets to get that other one, because, I don't know. Maybe they didn't have city space, so they couldn't get it from Carthage, but they still want it, so they went Secrets. Like things like that are very niche, but early game Still Suits for sure is going to be taken in rounds 1 and 2. Like I was saying, Hardy Warriors, that's in the top 4 spaces that are going to be taken early. For sure for leaders like Tessia, Leto, Baron for sure. Baron's foaming at the mouth for this space early to get that Master Stroke out. So usually you will see players block that Hardy early to slow down the Baron. Like that is a good play to do. There's times where I won't do it because I want Smuggle, because I want Swordmaster, but I probably should go to get that Hardy to block it, but You know, I just love Swordmaster, but it is a good play to block that because Baron wants it ASAP. And sometimes if you do block him early, it can mess him up for quite some rounds because depending on the reshuffles, like he may not get faction again, so around 3 or 4. And if he messed up on his management of troops, he might not even be able to deploy 4 troops on that Hardy now. Maybe he can only get 3 out, so he can't even get his Master Stroke. Like I've had games where someone has delayed Baron, and now he didn't get it round 2 because he had both factions round 1, and he got blocked. Round 2, he didn't have factions. Round 3, his shuffle was just bad, and he still didn't have faction. Or depending on the position that he's in, he got blocked again. So now round 4, depending on the hand on round 3, if he had faction or not, it could also delay him again there. So then you might even have to see like a Baron do a Hayliner to get that Master Stroke out. But that's in all the other players at that table's advantage to have done that block on Baron to slow him down because he's such a steamroller in early rounds. Let's get back to the points though here. Early game advantage. So early combat advantage sends 2 additional troops straight to conflict, making it key for winning early rounds. So I mean, if you want to win conflict rounds 1, 2, 3, go to Hardy Warriors, and you most likely will get that conflict unless someone goes like 2 city spaces and tosses out, or gets lucky with a combat intrigue. Then GG on that. Go next. But direct deployment, you gain 2 additional troops, gives fast, reliable entry into combat. It bypasses the garrison limit, allowing you to deploy 4 troops. And strategic pressure, so forces opponents to react if they lack troops or combat cards. If you're going Hardy Warriors right away, they now have to react, whether if they want to get into combat, maybe to pressure you, to maybe make you change what you're going to do next as your second agent, or whether they want to secure a second position now in the fight, knowing that you're definitely getting first. I'm going to go more in depth now on all those points there. So securing Hardy Warriors early can force opponents to overcommit resources or change plans, especially if they haven't acquired strong combat cards or garrison troops, tilting early game conflicts in your favor. For example, maybe your opponent lacked faction access, so they decided to go city space and deploy 3 troops. Maybe they didn't get combat intrigue, only have 1 or 2 daggers. You hit a Hardy as your first move, and now you got 4 troops into combat. Perhaps you do have daggers. If not, you have the option to hit another combat space to deploy the last troop, perhaps 2 troops from city space into the conflict to push your strength further to get to 10 or 12 without daggers added. And depending on how valuable you also determine the conflict is and how much you want to commit additionally, most of the time though, I feel like once you see a player go Hardy Warriors, you don't see the other players really contest the fight unless they know they can gain an advantage, such as the player who goes Karthag and gains a combat intrigue, or they have 2 city spaces open so that they can deploy 3 and then go to Air King and deploy another 2, and now they're tying you up essentially, or really pushing you now for the fight. Let's just get right into the other action space that's valuable early game that you'll see players go to, and that is wealth. For the Swordmaster setup, popular early pick to gain Solari towards a fast Swordmaster. There's leader synergy for extra value, as if you're Ilban, Archduke, and even Leto due to the Mentat space. And then the Solari Princess, this wealth space allows Yuna to gain 3 Solari instead of 2, speeding up her Swordmaster timing even more so, which is beautiful if you are the Solari Princess. I don't like playing as her, but if you do enjoy that playstyle, she is beautiful at getting Swordmaster quickly with the Solari gains. So like I said, early game, people love going here as a means to getting to Swordmaster faster with that 2 Solari that you've got now chilling in your pockets. And if you're a leader like Ilban, you'll see him go wealth into Mentat to draw more cards, cycle the deck, allow him to go last in the conflict, see if he can get a reward out of it, or even just draw for the persuasion, get a big Imperium card here, Atomics now with immortality. Archduke, you'll see go wealth into Mentat so that he can use his leader ability to trash a card if you go onto 2 Landsraad city or desert spaces. And then Leto wealth to Mentat, you'll see just maybe he didn't have ring in hand and maybe he wants to gamble on that Mentat to pull the ring out so that he can use his last agent to get that faction bump to Fold Space, which is most likely where it's going if someone has already gone there. Or, I mean, Leto can also just go, Mentat costs 1 Solari for him, so he still saves himself 1 Solari left over, but can go to Mentat, maybe get an extra card for Persuasion, or he's trying to plot some other moves, trying to pull something else out of his deck for that round. Now, Yuna, I mean, Yuna gets 3 Solari off of wealth, but you don't really see them go Mentat, you kind of just see them chill with that wealth money, which is what I would do, chill with the 3 Solari. Because the next round, if you're able to go wealth again, now you're at 6 Solari, someone dropped the track, you got your 7 Solari. Now you just got to find 1 little Solari to get your 8 as Yuna. And we're just going to move right to the next Emperor space, Conspire. So Spice for Solari combos well with Conspire to sell 4 Spice. for 5 Solari, 2 troops, and an intrigue, setting up Swordmaster timing. Setup dependent play requires planning in round 1 that you would need to go to still suits for that water for the Great Flat to then go conspire with that 4 spice. So you do need to have at least 1 faction in your first hand and 1 faction in a desert in your second hand for round 2 to execute this play. Flexible follow-up, so after Conspire, remaining Solari can come from conflicts, opponent shipping drops, or a wealth round 3, turn 1 to finish off the Swordmaster cause. But as I was saying earlier, like if you're position 3 or 4, this is where you're going to see those players go for the Conspire. And I actually even maybe prefer doing the Conspire route because you go still suits, you're able to toss in a troop or whatever for round 1 conflicts. Maybe get a little treat out of that. Round 2, you're going to Great Flat. You have an opportunity to toss in a troop here, limp in. Maybe you are lucky enough to get a reward out of that. But you also get to go to Conspire after and refill those troops. So if you limped in round 1 with 1 troop, you limped in round 2 with 1 troop. I mean, you may get rewards. Obviously, there are players who will go in and toss in 2 on top of your 1. And another player will go in and toss 2. And then your 1 little guy is done. But you get it refueled back there with the Conspire 2 troops and the little bonus intrigue with your 5 Solari that you can pocket. But I kind of do like Conspire. I mean, I even feel like I like Conspire more than going fold into interstellar shipping. I just find that the Conspire route is just quicker. I don't know. I find that when I do the fold space to interstellar shipping route, that Swordmaster kind of feels like it comes late to me when I can get that out compared to when I can go still suits Great Flat into Conspire. That's why I think I kind of prefer to play different positions now more so than the position that allows you to get fold to interstellar, right? I kind of don't mind playing position 3, 4, even position 1 now, because you go smuggle first. If you're so lucky, maybe you do get still suits opened left over, and you can go there and get water so that you can set up for a Great Flat round 2 anyways, which is always great because then maybe you get both your experimentations out, 1 in round 1, round 1 in round 2, and now you get the Conspire, and now you're at 6 Solari, which is even better because in round 3, maybe you are a god at shuffling your deck and you got the access to go to wealth. So now you're on 8 for your Swordmaster round 3, right? I think I prefer Conspire, to be honest, to get my Solari. I don't know. It's just something feels good about doing the still suits, the Great Flat to Conspire early game to really push the Solari, especially if you can't do smuggle, right? Like if you can't go smuggle up and then smuggle next round drop for the Solari to be on 7, then it definitely feels good to be able to do it with Conspire and get someone else's shipping drop to give you an additional Solari. All right. So now we got secrets here, early game value, playable faction access. Secrets is often used early just to play a Diplo or seek allies if no better faction spaces are open and you want to just get a influence this round to not waste those cards. Fallback round 1 to play for player 4 when stronger faction spots are blocked or suboptimal. It's a Hanjo flex pick where sometimes taken by Hanjo to get the second intrigue if the first one from his ability was especially strong and doesn't have city access, or just wants to play his faction card and get that intrigue anyways. And more depth on that point, so early game you will most likely only see secrets be taken rounds 1 and 2 as a means to play your faction access card, as you kind of hate to see a Diplo sit in your hand and not be played to at least get a 0.5 influence out of it. So usually you see a secrets play if player 4 is blocked everywhere else their hand can go, or they don't want to go a certain space that is left open and would rather play their faction access. And like I said, you may also see the Hanjo player go secrets if the second intrigue card was really good on their leader ability. And however, you most likely would see them go Karthag if they do have the access, but sometimes they don't have the access and they still want that second intrigue, so they will just run it to secrets. And that's when you know that that intrigue was probably really good, right? It's probably plans within plans. Let's be honest, it's probably plans within plans. But early game secrets, you're not really gonna see it. I mean, like I said, it's fold, it's still suits, it's hardy, it's wealth for faction for the most part early game. Selective breeding is a little bit of a weird one for early game. I mean, it is possible you can go selective in round 1 if you show desire to use your desert to go Haga into faction into selective. I don't know why, but maybe you got the desire, you got the dream, the passion to try to get some persuasion or something. But in round 2, 3, more so desirable. Early draw gamble though, obviously selective breeding offers strong card draw, but it's rarely visited early unless you are chasing a high cost Imperium card. And with Immortality now, say goodbye to it with the Atomic. I just don't see it being worth it to do it. But it's there if you want to. Take that gamble. You know, sometimes we do like gambling, but we don't promote it. Spice-dependent access requires early spice from Haga, making it around 1 or 2 niche play at best. And it's best for draw leaders like Paul, Helena, who benefited from it most. Paul for bonus draw, Helena with Signet Ring. I mean, there's not much else to say about selective early because it is a very niche scenario to be going selective in rounds 1 to 3, I would say. I mean, obviously, if you're Paul, if you're Helena, more so, I would say. Or maybe you do want to get some early trashing going. You got the spice, you don't want to use it for something else, then for sure, go hit up selective, get that trash in, draw 2 more cards, maybe get a high persuasion card if you are lucky. Otherwise, you're not seeing selective taken early. Same as research station, you're not really seeing those in the first rounds 1 and 2. Okay, I saved the best faction spot for last. Fold space, guild access, key to quickly reaching 2 influence with the spacing guild, granting you a faction access card. The end. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. That's all you guys need to know about fold space. Unlock shipping. Fastest path to open shipping, interstellar shipping, major early game advantage. You're going to see player 2 ideally go fold to fold if you got the right hand. Now you do see some player 1s, position 1, block fold space. I used to do that a lot in Rise of X when I was new at the game, but I don't think that's a good play anymore. I don't think you should be doing that. Go smuggle. Just go smuggle. If you got the access to smuggle, go smuggle. If you don't have yellow, then sure, I guess you could go fold just to block it from the other player. I mean, what else are you going to do depending on your hand? So then in that scenario, maybe yes, just go there anyways. But player 1 going fold, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. This space is also highly contested, almost always taken in rounds 1 to 3 for strategic importance with that interstellar shipping, obviously, and especially for leaders such as Tessia, Leto, and the Stinky Baron, right? Master Stroke it round 1 for the Baron. He wants that full space round 2 so he can unlock shipping. Or maybe y'all people at the table there let Baron go fold as first move. Then you let him go Hardy as second, and now he got shipping open first stage in round 2. I've seen it happen. It's disgusting, but it happens sometimes. I mean, other than that, there's not much more to say about fold space. You go there, you get your little fold space card, then you wait for the next round to go there again so that you can open your Amazon package. Right? That's basically what you're doing. So it is the momentum spot to go early game, right? People do prioritize it early, heavily to get that interstellar shipping open so that they can start doing their shopping on Amazon to get their shipping bumps, their troops, the Solari for the Swordmaster. But that's really all you got to say about fold space, and especially if round 1 is that intrigue, or not the intrigue, but the conflict bump, the faction bump, round 1 conflict. That one is huge for Tessia. It is huge for Leto as well if you got the right hand with Leto, and it is obviously the biggest conflict for Mr. Baron to have. If you see that conflict and there's a Baron in your game, please go block Hardy, because otherwise Baron's going Hardy. He's got the Master Stroke on fold space, Emperor, whatever spacing. You know he's going there. That conflict should just be the icon of spacing, because that's where anyone just puts that bump in round 1. It's just spacing. So that icon should just go to spacing anyways for that conflict, because you never see anyone else really use it for any other space than spacing. That's my thoughts on full space. Great space, early access, go for it. And since we ended on the best space for early game, we are going to start the mid game with the best space. So full space, mid game. I mean, it's still a space people go after if they need the friendship bump. If they're trying to open shipping now, they were late to open it into the early rounds, but they can open it now, so they'll go there now. Hayliner. I mean, Hayliner, I feel like a lot of people value this space differently. Some will never go there mid-game, and others will bull their whole load on this in a conflict that isn't even really all that. And others won't touch Hayliner until it's late game only. Personally, I take Hayliner mid-game myself if it's a VP conflict, or the double faction bump conflict if it means getting friendships or alliances, as I value those 2 types of conflicts more so than the other ones that can happen in mid-game, like the shipping one or the Mentat one. Those conflicts, or even Guildbang Ray. Like, I've seen some people drop a Hayliner on a Guildbang Ray, which is kind of crazy, but it happens. Also, the 2 water game from Hayliner helps run it back to Great Flat, so it does give you that advantage to refuel that spice or perhaps a research station in another round. All right, let's go over the bulletin points mid-game for starting with fold space. Should I go there? Should you go there? Should you go to fold space mid-game? I mean, it's often overlooked. It's not as prioritized for people anymore as it is in early game to get that interstellar shipping open. Obviously, there are still players such as myself trying to get that friendship, so I can maybe touch interstellar shipping one day in my lifetime. But the fold space does give you a card there that does offer both deck cycling and consistent utility with the access. So there is that benefit of going there. Get your 0.5 or get your friendship, or maybe you want to pressure an alliance, but also you get that faction access card with that full space card, and it allows deck cycling as well, which isn't that bad. And with the Hayliner variants, players value Hayliner differently. As I was saying, some hoard the spice for late game. They're waiting for round 7. unless it's Grand Vision. I had that happen to me earlier today, where I was prepared for the round 6 or the round 7 conflict, and it was Grand Vision, not 2 VPs. So upsetting. But others will just hoard that spice for round 7, round 8 for the conflicts, for the VPs. Some people will just hoard it also for techs, right? Or otherwise, people are overcommitting mid game with the Hayliner. Its true mid game strength lies in leveraging it for valuable conflicts such as VPs or the double factions. As I was saying, if I'm going Hayliner mid game, it's got to be for a VP or the double faction bumps, I would say, to really give me that value. I've seen though people go, what's that conflict? The conflict with the intrigue and the 3 spice. I don't know the name right now, but that one kind of gives you half the cost of Hayliner back. So there is, I guess you can maybe squeeze it, but not me, not me. All right, back to the Fremen spaces here for mid game. Still suits, drip drop. I need water. I want to set up. I have a card that needs water. I like science. Research station. Still suits, still valued in the mid game to get the water. It's a precious resource that enables plays such as gathering spice, going research. If you got 2 water, allows you access to his big brother, the hard warrior, with that 1 water access requirement. By mid game, water is usually spent by a couple players as a means for their great flat plays earlier, and the only way to gain back that water is going still suits or having 2 access on Fremen to go siege or conflicts. So you can kind of leverage the info of knowing how much water people have or may not have and starve them out of water if they can't get it from a conflict, or if they can't get it because you block still suits and they don't have siege open, which allows you to set up for great flat or research while others have no way to gain that water unless they can go to siege or have a card that gives water, or the tech, wind traps, or from a conflict. So you can starve people of water. I mean, in this economy, you can get starved out of a lot of stuff, but thankfully water isn't one of them for us, you know? All right, next point. She loves a hard warrior. Hardy warriors, I'm easy to hit. I still have value mid game. I put the pressure on. Hardy warriors mid game is up there with Hayliner, easy to hit though with the cost of it being 1 water. The space is still highly valued to swing combats or put pressure on a combat as perhaps first move to really show the ops what's up. You go here and then you use your other agents as backup to secure the conflict through city deployment spaces or the deserts. But you're gonna see Hardy still mid game. If someone wants a conflict and they got the water, they're going to go to Hardy Warriors and they're going to dump in that conflict to secure it. All right. So if you want a conflict, you should probably go Hardy Warriors if you got the means. Otherwise, maybe you can't beat them on in just a city space or double city space or city space desert or something like that. And you don't need Hardy Warriors. But Hardy Warriors is still valued mid game for a lot of players and still a sought after space as well to be getting conflicts in those mid game rounds. Okay, on to the Emperor, the wealth, the conspire, the stock market is crashing. The value of wealth goes down, I would say, in mid game. I mean, once you've acquired your Swordmaster, I mean, it's still a valid spot to go to if you want High Council, but you're probably squabbling together some change from other people dropping on their shipping, or you've gotten conflict money, so you may be only going to wealth to gain some mentat money, to gain that friendship, to gain that 0.5. Otherwise, I think the value of wealth and even conspire mid game kind of starts dropping down as we go further into the game. I mean, unless you're trying to get the alliance, or I mean, depending on the leader that you are. If you're Yuna, then obviously now you're up. You know, 3 Solari now with the wealth. Ilbon though, I think would be the most ideal person to continue hitting wealth for that mentat money for him. Or if you have cards like Firm Grip, T-Lax Surgeon, Throne Room Politics, or some graph card that allows you to combo and take alliances on the Emperor. Mom, I need some Solari. It's a means to recoup on a bad parlay. You took a bad gamble. You spent your Solari somewhere. You need a little more cash now. You gave your mom some spice. She's giving you 5 Solari, some 2 troops, and an intrigue. I mean, the value on this space goes down too as well after early game once people have gone their Swordmaster. You don't really see people spending spice mid game unless it's for tech or high counts, or I mean, Hayliner, things in that manner. Obviously, you do still see some players go conspire to get some cash. Maybe they got some other strategies going on. Maybe they got chome shares in their pockets that they need that extra cash for and they can't reach the shipping track for it. But like wealth, conspire's value goes down. It's really only valuable if it's based around a strategy or an alliance still perhaps. Or maybe you got an excess amount of spice that you can go and give the Emperor here for some Solari, Intrigue, and Troops recoup. But other than that, the value of both these spaces continues to drop if it's not relevant to your strategy and you've already got the friendships or you're trying to compete for an alliance. All right, so onto the next spaces here for the end of the mid-game value. So secrets, selective, Sisterhood of the Traveling Intrigue here with secrets, good use of faction access. Could gain an entry that swings you combat, swings you faction alliances or friendships. Could get a VP intrigue off of this. Could get an end game off of this that determines your whole strategy now for the rest of the game. Secrets is still used as a means to just play your faction card, but the priority, I think, of this space does go up for mid game compared to the early game, obviously. And you could slip into an end game intrigue or something helpful that you can use here for combat or something else, or to take advantage, maybe get infiltrate, and now all of a sudden now you can get to a space that you couldn't to before because it keeps getting blocked, but now you can. But yeah, it's a good spot to get some betting access if you don't want to spend the spice, but you still want to get out your faction and you've got friendships elsewhere. So secrets is a good spot. And also, if you see someone with 4 intrigues, be slimy. Go to secrets, take that intrigue from them. Maybe you take out their corner of the market. They've been playing their whole game strategy around, and now you took it, and now they don't have those extra 2 VPs that they were trying to get throughout the rest of the rounds here. So now you up now, and they're down, so they can benefit you. Also, I would like to add, Secrets is not a bad spot to be going mid-game here if you want to play out your faction and you don't have a reason to be using your Diplo to go still suits or wealth or fold space. Going Secrets is like a last agent move isn't bad. I kind of undervalue Secrets in a way because there are times where I'll have faction and maybe Secrets I should be going to just see if I can top deck something useful or something that can change something for me in the game. And I just decided to go still suit, just get a water when I don't really have a means or use for that water currently. All right, and you better tighten up a means to slim your deck, get rid of the trash, see your good cards more often. Selective breeding is very valuable mid-game to thin your deck out, help with gaining 1 to 2 good cards in the Imperium row before you most likely start to only focus on trying to add Spice Must Flows to the deck. As the later the game goes on, the less chance you see the cards that you do pick up. Unless your deck is slim, then you do increase those chances pretty nicely. This space is great mid-game though. You do hope that your discard pile lines up with you having Spice and having faction access and is not blocked either, and your daggers ideally are in that discard if you haven't already trashed them out. Otherwise, I kind of feel bad going here if I'm not trashing like the daggers, my recon at this point. Maybe convincing if you've already replaced them with something else, but unless your hand is really bad and you need saving, which can't be done by City Space or Mentat, I don't want to go to selective breeding if my discard pile isn't really lined up, because it does feel bad if you do have to trash out of a hand, but sometimes it is necessary for you to have to do that. And sometimes it still works out even if you do it that way. All right, let's get back to the best late game value spot, and that is fold space. Late game, why are we going to fold space, boys? Is it because of plans within plans within plans, or you're going here to steal an alliance? Plans within plans. You have other plans for needing to go here. Maybe this is your last bump needed for that memo card you picked up in round 2 and you didn't think you were going to be able to get it done, but here's your last agent with your last move to get that full space to get your memo cards activated. That's been me before. Or maybe you just need the friendship still. Maybe this is your 11th point and you weren't getting it. You didn't have shipping all game, but you were still able to get the 10 points and this is your 11th point. So you're just going to full space just to get that friendship and chilling. Really, late game fold space value is down in the dumps, I would say, unless you do have a means of going here for some other reason for going here. That's the only reason why I see players go fold space in late game is because it achieves something else. Stealing an alliance, friendship, or perhaps setting up for another play. Maybe this is round 7, but you think it's going to go around another round, so you're setting up for a play in round 8 that involves fold space and spacing, guild, alliance, something like that. Otherwise, the priority on full space is very, very, very low. Now, Hayliner, on the other hand, my Arrakis, my Dune, I'm taking this conflict and this victory, or you're trying your best to do so. Hayliner, late game, big value. You can already see which players are going to be going to Hayliner, which players probably have it in mind to go to Hayliner. Do they have 6 spice? Or perhaps, does no one have 6 spice, but the Great Flat has spice to get you to Hayliner, and people have water, so now they're thinking Great Flat to Hayliner to get that, to try to get those round 7 conflicts, the round 8 conflict to try to end it here. My Rack is my doing Hayliner. Big priority for people. You want to secure those 2 VP conflicts. I don't really want to secure Grand Vision, but maybe Grand Vision is able to get you an alliance. But in the latest game I played, it was not able to do so. So I'm a little sour by that. But Hayliner late game, big value for this space. You're going to see players prioritize it in round 6, maybe round 5. Just to set up getting ready for Hayliner to be able to go there, hit it first if they're in the right position to try to get that combat for round 7, 2 VPs or whatnot. Also, even going Hayliner as first action, and now you have 2 waters, so now if no one else has water, or some people are delaying their means of going to research, you can go Hayliner, research, draw. Maybe you can get combat. Maybe you can get Spice Must Flow as well. Maybe the research track is going to pull you something, some value out of it. Maybe you needed another beetle or something like that. So the Hayliner into the research station is also another thing that we do see late game happen here if other people have not been managing their resources properly here for this late game. All right, back to the Fremen, Hardy, and Still Suits. Still Suits, I'm thirsty still. Maybe you need 1 water. You need a research station. Other people don't have the water for a research station. Or maybe you're really gambling that someone's not going to go and see that you're going Still Suits for a water to then go research and be blocked. Or maybe you have other plans in mind for this water. Maybe you guys say Adina. Maybe you have Water of Life and you're missing a water, but you have the spice. So then you kind of get your own research from your intrigue. Things like that. Maybe you want to toss a little extra into combat here and Hardy's taken, or you just didn't have the water to go Hardy and city spaces are taken. Maybe you need that friendship. The value of Still Suits is still there a little bit, but it's still not as high value prioritized as it was in early game and mid game, but it's still a valued option. And also late game, I think a lot of these spaces late game, like the ones that are like more low priority, their priority increases depending on the game state. So like Still Suits, Secrets, Wealth, Fold Space, I think the priority kind of raises or whatever, depending on if you're able to steal an alliance by going to these spaces, or if they do give you that friendship or help you move towards another plan that you have in mind. Maybe you're trying to set up for a shifting steal with allegiance, or you've got a bribery or something to steal with, and you're just trying to set up a play very, very late to just try to weasel out an extra VP and make someone lose an alliance. Then the value of these lesser spaces of faction kind of go up depending on your game state and what you've got available to you. Now for Hardy Warriors, I might be able to get this conflict. I'm going to fight for this conflict through Hardy Warriors in pure strength. Maybe you got intrigues as well. Maybe no one on the board can get Hayliner, but you might be able to get the conflict with just a Hardy Warriors, right? It's like there have been games where someone goes Hardy Warriors and gets round 7's conflict because no one had set up for that spice, or they just spent the spice on a tech or something to get a VP instead because they don't think they can get the conflict through just their 5 troops off of Hayliner. Maybe they didn't have anything to pressure the conflict a little more. So a Hardy Warriors could potentially get you a conflict, or it could even be a means of a backup. Maybe you did go Hardy, but you still aren't confident because you got no conflicts or no conflict intrigues, and you don't have any. So maybe what you need to do is go Hardy right after going Hayliner to really push in a couple more troops to the fight. So there still is value to Hardy Warriors late game along with all the other factions, as I've been saying, if it does lend you to being able to steal an alliance or gaining the last friendship that you haven't just been able to get all game. But Hardy Warriors still has some value for those combats late game as a means to get more troops in, or even put pressure on the fight to someone who did go Hayliner, but you might be able to edge them out with the Hardy and a city space because you got combats hiding in your hand there, or maybe you built your deck around combat. Alright, so the Emperor spaces, Wealth, Conspire, I'm only good for 2 things. Do you need Solari? Do you need an alliance? Do you need a friendship? Or do you have a bigger idea in mind for me? Wealth and Conspire late game are very, very, very low priority. I might even say they're the lowest priority of spaces, maybe late game. Depending on what you got going on. Do you have Opulence? So maybe you do need some Solari. Do you have a Chom Shares intrigue that you need to get Solari for? Do you have Rapid Mobilization and you couldn't get Hayliner, but you got Conspire? You're 1 bump away from Emperor Alliance to get those 2 extra troops there so you can rapid a bunch of more troops into the fight. Do you need the 5 Solari for those intrigues, reinforcements, so on? You know, like those are the kind of things that Wealth and Conspire are for late game, is if you have things that need to be done in your hand, in your deck, in your intrigue cards that you need Solari for, or you need to try to get the alliance, obviously, right? Or even you need that friendship, maybe. Or memo chords, plans within plans, things like that. That's the only time you're really seeing moves being made to Wealth and Conspire this late in the game, because what are you doing with that Solari if you can't get the alliance, you can't get the friendship, and you're just playing a Diplo to Wealth late game? What are you doing with that 2 Solari if you're not using it as another means to move you closer to the finish line, right? So I think these spaces here are very, very low priority for players unless they're part of your plan, a part of your bigger idea that allows you to achieve something to get VPs, to maybe get the conflict, something like that. All right, so the last set of late game value faction spaces, and that is back to the bennies, the selective breeding, and secrets. So secrets, intrigue, steal, gamble. I see you have 4 intrigues. May I steal? You go into secrets, still need friendships, still need alliances. You just want to get an intrigue because you got no other moves to do. Maybe Carthag's taken, city space are taken. You still have faction, and you're just gonna gamble on that secret to see if you maybe you get combat. Intrigue might swing combat for you. Maybe you get so lucky that you get a intrigue where it's faction bump that you can actually use it to steal something with, right? Secrets late game, you're just going there to just try to fish for some kind of out for you to try to push you to that finish line. And maybe in the meantime, it might get you your alliance here or a friendship or protect your alliance, right? And for selective breeding, I mean, you're going here because, bruh, you need to draw. My hand is trash. You took my research, you took my mentat. I need to get at least some sort of drawing here. So I'm going selective to try to get a spice must flow or just try to do something, right? Maybe your hand is really bad and you got a dip blow or some other sort of access to the Benny, but the rest of your hand, you can't really play out your agents, so you just need something to grasp at to do something with this round. So you want to hit selective here to reach into your pocket to see what you can pull out, right? Obviously, you want to try to get the spice must flow in these late games. You want to try to get that VP for yourself there off of that. If you can't get the conflicts, if you can't steal something from someone, or you can't achieve VPs otherwise, you want to at least guarantee that you're going to get a spice must flow in this late game round. I think to finish off this factions value for late game part here is late game. I think factions really are a priority for you if it is a means for you to get something else done that allows you to achieve yourself a bit closer to victory, right? Like if it allows you to get that last friendship, it allows you to set up for an alliance still, it allows you to set up for like a tech or something that you want to get done, memo chords, right? Late game value of these faction spaces really depends on what you've done in the early and mid game to set yourself up here in the late game and what these faction spaces can do for you in the late game and what use you can get out of them to try to get you that victory, that W, that 11 points, get some push over there, see what you can get done. All right, so that is the final board game space values done here. If y'all didn't watch the city, the Landsraads, the desert space ones, click the link in the bio and you can find those videos there, as well as I will probably be compiling all these videos into one big video just to have it there as well for someone who wants to watch over an hour-long video of just yapping about the value of all the board spaces for early, mid, and late game. I do appreciate everyone who watched this series. Do leave a comment if you enjoy this type of video, this type of content. I am looking to do more strategy videos. I do have some ideas in mind, so be on the lookout for that. Do hit that like, do hit that subscribe, leave a comment down below for me to give me your thoughts and opinions, and consider becoming a channel member for exclusive stream VODs, emotes, and other videos. I appreciate all support regardless, and thank you guys so much, and until next time guys, peace. Also, I gotta say at the end of this video here, I kind of raw dogged this faction board space value video. I'm sure you can tell the difference between this one and the other 3 that I did. The other 3 were more kind of scripted, but this one was kind of like push record, say what's on my mind, and the record, slam it together. I think it still came out pretty good. I think there's still a lot of great information in this video, but I just think it's funny from the difference of the other 3 where I actually wrote out a script for them. But this one, I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do off the top of the dome. I'm just gonna see what we can put out here. So you're gonna be able to see the difference between that. But I hope that it's still enjoyable and maybe even a little funnier because I mean some of the stuff I say is a little crazy. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed. Peace.